Hey everybody, welcome to episode, it's a 70? Yeah, 70, wow. Um, Today's episode, I feel like we've neglected comic books for a little while, so I'm going to go back and do some comic books in this one. I got pretty heavy with the music, like I said, I've been real kind of heavy into the band Ghost lately and into the vinyl collecting and that stuff. But you know, and I kind of, like I said, transitioning somewhat out of the action figures, but I'm never out of comic books. I mean, I do them professionally as a living. So, that's, probably, that's probably my, I don't know if it's my first love. Yeah, probably. Um, Obviously I love playing music. I love, I love the toys. I love my childhood. I love the 80s. Um, but I think probably my first love is probably, well, it's drawing. Um, and then, of course, what am I drawing? And comic books is probably my first real passion. You know, I mean, would I would rather be a rock star than be a comic book artist? Sure. you know, uh, would I get more out of it? Maybe. I don't know. Never been a rock star before. I have done comics, so I can tell you about that. So let's go back to comics, and let's go back again. I feel like I kind of left off on the X-Men. I'm not going to go right to Inferno yet, remember, because like I said, I haven't reread Inferno lately. I don't currently own any of the Inferno comics. Like I said, I sold mine off in a bundle on eBay a few summers ago, a while ago actually, probably about 5 years ago. Um, and I kind of sold like a bundle. I sold my Fall of the Mutants. I sold my Inferno. I was like making bundles of different comic books just to, because I needed money, and I figured that would be a neat way to sell them than just sell them like in a big lot, or individually would just take forever. And they went quick. I mean, I didn't have a lot on there. I didn't put them on as an auction either. I put them as, buy it now or whatever it is, and they sold pretty fast. So I mean, I kick myself for selling them, but they're not. I mean, 20, $30, $40. I can get them again. It's not a big deal. I don't really. Again, I like having the physical media, just like the vinyl thing, right? However, that said, comic books, physical comic books, like the actual comic books, which I'm not going to open mine up, but I'm going to talk about some here, and I've got a little stack. And these are X-Men comics, so Uncanny X-Men comics from that time period, and I'm going to kind of bridge the gap here between Fall of the Mutants and Inferno, and talk about my favorite incarnation of the X-Men, which is the Down Under X-Men. Obviously, that's when they, right after Fall of the Mutants, they go into hiding and they go down under to Australia, and that team is, and I said it in the other video, that team is my favorite lineup of X-Men of all time. And and like I said, certain versions of the characters are my absolute favorite. I mean, number one is Rogue. That Rogue from that time period is my absolute favorite. And and Mark Silvestri's art is one of my absolute favorite X-Men artists. I mean, Byrne's stuff's great. Don't get me wrong. Byrne stuff's awesome, and I love Byrne. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I love Cockrum, and I love Arthur Adams. Obviously, he's probably my second favorite on the X-Men is Arthur Adams. But my number one favorite on the X-Men is Mark Silvestri, and I would say that I like Arthur Adams better. And I think Arthur Adams had more of an influence on me personally than Silvestri did. However, he did such a small pocket of comics. Silvestri just outdid him as far as just sheer output of X-Men comics, and so there's just more of it. So that's why I think he's my favorite. I mean, sure, I like Arthur Adams, and when I say Arthur Adams, I mean old Arthur Adams, like first gen Arthur Adams. 85 to 89. I don't like Arthur Adams' style today. I think it's too cartoony. I mean, he's always been a little cartoony, and he's always been a little, he kind of is one of the, not the, because I mean Blevins did that too, but he was one of the people that were doing that at the time. But I just think his faces and the way he drew characters was just so much better then, and I don't really care for his new versions of it. Like if you look up a new drawing of his of Rogue or Storm, it just looks weird. They all kind of, I don't know, I can't say they all look the same as a problem, because a lot of my characters that I draw, the faces sometimes look the same, because I just certain things I like to draw on faces. But yeah, I just not a big fan of his modern stuff. And same thing with Silvestri. And when Silvestri went to Image, I didn't care about him anymore. I didn't like whatever it was, the darkness that he was doing. Cyberforce was okay when it first came out, but again, I really don't like the 90s and of comic books, and I really didn't like. I mean, I can't say that for certain. I mean, I like J. Scott Campbell. Speaking of a guy, who was influenced by Arthur Adams, I liked Gen 13. There was a small amount of comics in the 90s that I liked, very small amount. But like I said, the Silvestri thing, and Silvestri did what's her face too. What the heck's her name? Totalist Witchblade. That's Silvestri, I believe. Like when he first started, it was okay. I don't know. I kind of like it, but I don't like it. I don't know. I look at it, it's hard for me to, something about it, I don't know why I don't like it. Maybe I just don't like the time period. Whatever it is, all of that stuff mixed together just is, it's off-putting to me when I see it. So, and like I said, it's not much. I mean, he was doing pretty much X-Men up until he, bolted, started doing that stuff. So it's not like his art style changed that drastically. I just liked him doing the X-Men character so much better. So in this video, I want to talk about a stretch of comics, and I do have those comics here, barring a couple of them, and I'll tell you why. We're looking at issues 229, which is not the first comic, by the way, after Fall of the Mutants. Sorry, I didn't realize I had the screen already up with the comic books open. Okay, sorry. Usually I like to open up with me on the screen and then go into it, but I guess that's fine. I don't really care to redo the first part of this video, so we'll just go with it. Anyways, let's see, where are we at here? Where's Fall of the Mutants? Fall of the Mutants is here. Okay, at 227. So 228. I have had it before. I got rid of it. Well, maybe I do have it. I think I do have it down there. I just didn't pull it. I don't like. This is Leonardi, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. Let's just double check. Yes, it is. I really don't like Leonardi's art. In fact, I hate it. I think it's terrible. I just don't like it. I mean, the dudes look okay. The girls, I mean, that's okay eyes there. I don't know. I just don't like his art. And so every time the Leonardi issues would come up in X-Men, I would just roll my eyes like, oh Christ, And then after the first time I saw him, and then when it would come out, I would just roll my eyes like, I don't, because we didn't have previews back then. You didn't really know who was going to be doing the artwork until the comic came out and hit the spinner racks, and then you buy it and it's like, oh, here's the new X-Men. I'm like, I just don't like it. I'm just kind of flipping through it here. I can't tell you exactly why I don't like it. I just don't. Maybe it's just because it's the women look terrible. Like I said, Wolverine looks fine there. I find the style too harsh of a contrast with what's his face, Silvestri. I don't know. I just didn't like it. So I'm not starting with that issue. I'm skipping to this one, 229. And we'll do 229, and then we're going to go to 230, which I believe... No, it's not the first... obviously, because he's in Fall of the Mutants, Longshot joins the X-Men, I think, back in issue 224, I think, or during one of the annuals, I think, actually, if I'm not mistaken. We've got 232, and the reason I've got that, of course, is because 231, as you can see here, is done by Leonardi again. Now, I don't mind that collage. Actually, when I first saw this cover, I didn't mind the Colossus at first. I was like, oh, it kind of looks neat, because he's just so impressive looking. You know, it's kind of hard to draw Colossus bad. You know, and then, you know, I don't dislike this. You know, that's a great drawing, I think. It looks really, you know, aesthetically it looks really well. You know, if you like a shirtless dude in some 80s shorts, who's muscle bone. But I mean, for me, it's the metal skin and these lines, too. All the little lines, you know, with each muscle, and you curve the line. I mean, I love that. Rogue doesn't look terrible here. I don't know what's going on with the glasses. I don't know if I like the glasses or not. That's supposed to be her bodysuit, and he's doing more of the green. He's not doing it as black. And he kind of, you know, that's the other thing is I don't like when my characters are out of costume. I don't like, you know, I don't mind. I guess sometimes I don't mind it, but when they're out of costume, it just kind of irks me. I also think her butt is way too... Something's going on there. I don't like the way he drew her butt. And if you're going to draw a shot like that, I mean, obviously that's your focus of that panel. It just looks weird. Like I would have curved this line a little better, and this black line here would have brought in a little bit more, you know, there's got some storm butt there. But yeah, I mean, Colossus looks nice. You know, I mean, that's really nice looking there. Sorry, I'm butt focused at the moment, but that's got a kind of a neat look to it. This one is, I gotta say, this one's not as bad, but like this page kind of falls apart. It just looks like some pages he's on it, and then some page he just totally just phones it in, and it just comes off harsh. You know, his sister Iliada's in this one, so it's a very New Mutant issue. I gotta say, when I really think about it, and I really sit back and I look at it as objectively as possible and not let anything sway my opinion, I gotta say I'm not a fan of the New Mutants. It's not because that Bill Sienkiewicz run. That's not what killed it for me, although that didn't help. But there's something about the New Mutants I just don't like. I don't know what it is. I'm seem like I'm saying that a lot. There's something about this. I don't know. It's hard to articulate it. It's just like when you taste the food and you're like, oh, I don't care for that. Don't want that again. Not gonna order that again. You know. And somebody says why? I'm like, I can't really tell you. I just know I don't like it. So yeah. So there's that one. So then we got the Brood issue 232. Because this is all kind of say. Sorry, there goes the yawning again. Sorry if I'm not yawning, scratching my nads, or coughing profusely in a video. I guess it's just not one of my videos, is it? So, you know, here's issue 233, and the Brood show up. This is a great cover here. Issue 234, and these I consider the non-event cross or Down Under comics. This is probably one of my favorite covers of all time. The cover of 236. I love the way Rogue's drawn. I love just the composite. I love their, you know, I love the comic. I love when they go to Genosha. I did a commission for somebody and kind of did a take on Genosha in this specific comic, and you know, the two comics that happens in, and oh my gosh, I'll get to that in a second. But anyways, and I thought it kind of came out pretty good. Gave me a chance to do Rogue. You know, again, I can draw all of these characters, the dudes as well. I can draw these characters pretty well. For some reason, and I have no clue why, but every time I try to draw Rogue, she just, I've probably talked about this, it just somehow gets away on me. It's the hair, the crazy. I mean, I love that crazy hair, but for some reason it gets away from me sometimes. And sometimes her face looks wrong. And a lot of my faces look the same. I mean, I'm kind of drawing it myself, sorry. But yeah, I what do you call it? For some reason it irks me. Oh, I just noticed, just in case anybody wants to know, I did buy these comics. I think about 8 years ago from Comics Corner. That I guess comics a little price tag up there. I guess it. I should do a video on comic book shops, like my comic book shop haunts, but none of them really exist anymore. But this one still does, and it still does so much that their sign that was brand new, and I think they opened up in 1990. I think was their first year at this comic book shop, which is pretty close to the trailer park. It was over on it. Well, it's still there. At least I believe it's still there. It's on John R. and Auburn Road, John R. and Auburn, which is right around the block from where my mom lives now. Anyways, that place opened in 1990, and that kind of became the go-to place. Everybody started it was great when it first opened up. It was actually a sister store to the Fraser store. Comics Corner had a store that I discovered with my dad. Back when my dad, there was this weird living situation with my dad back then. I would have been in ninth grade. This would have been 1988. I believe it was like winter-ish. Not like the dead of winter, but it was starting to get warmer. It was the second semester of ninth grade, and school was still in session. And I used to go to my dad's every weekend. My mom, I never really spent that many weekends with my mom. I'd always go out to my dad's in his trailer. My mom moved to a trailer. My dad lived in a trailer, double trailers. And my dad's a character. But anyways, he ended up selling his current trailer, the one he first moved out there at the Hidden Lake Estates trailer park. He ended up selling it to his brother, my Uncle Bob, who's passed away as well. He died early, too. He died in his 40s from colon cancer. But Bob bought my dad's trailer, and then my dad ended up moving across the trailer park towards like the front of the trailer park, front entrance of the trailer park. And he moved in with this old woman, and he was taking care of her. Because my dad, he was... he used to work. He wasn't a registered nurse. He was an osteopathic therapist back when I was young, when my parents were married, and he worked at Crittenden Hospital. And so he knew how to work oxygen machines, and he knew how to do a lot of that stuff. So he became kind of like a live-in nurse for this old woman, because her kids didn't want to put her into a home. And they wanted somebody to be there 24/7, kind of like what my mom needs right now. He wanted to, so he moved into her trailer, sold his trailer to my Uncle Bob, and then he lived there with her and took care of her, 24/7. But her kids would come pick her up on the weekend and take her, to visit with her. And so it was just my dad in that trailer, and he kind of took over the trailer. It was weird. I mean, he was young. He was younger than me at the time, because this would have been 88. Yeah, he was like, I mean, I'm 50 now, and in 93 he would have turned 50. So this is 88. He's younger than me now. I don't know. I can't see myself right now living with an old woman, and taking care of her. I don't know. It was a weird situation, and I always questioned it, but it was what it was. It was what it was. So, I would go out there every weekend, and the problem was sometimes they couldn't take the mother, and I still was going to go out there for the weekend, and my dad's like, well, I don't want my son coming out here with her here. So, he told the family, he's like, well, if you can't take her, I'm going to take off for the weekend, so she's going to fend for herself. Just kind of weird. And then my dad would go when we would rent. That's really weird. This was another weird story, but we'd go to Fraser, which is pretty far from out where Hidden Lakes was. We drive down to Fraser because my dad discovered this. I think he knew about it. There was a hotel, and I think it's still there. I'm not 100% sure what it costs or what it is today, but it was kind of a really weird place. There was a hotel. It was like a complex too, and it was on one of the crossroads from off of not Gratiot. Was it Gratiot? It was Van Dyke. No, it was Van Dyke. Which is now you're talking like Macomb County going. If you're going keep going south, you're going to eventually hit Detroit. But this was like this was like the mile roads coming out of northern Detroit, the Metro Detroit area. And your Metro Detroit Ford dealer. Sorry, it just popped in my head. But anyways, so he would go down to this hotel, and the hotel was $25 a night. Now this is 1988. It had a big sign too. You could see it from both mile roads. A giant sign. It says the something something hotel. I gotta look it up and see what it is. But it said it's $25 a night, which is cheap then. I mean, crazy cheap now. You can't get a hotel room for $25 a night now, but you could get it for $25 a night in '88, which was cheap then. Because even then, a hotel room, like a decent hotel room, even at, like a Days Inn or something, was still probably like $50, $60, $70. I think you can actually stay at the Days Inn today still for like $70 or $50. But anyways, it was $25 to stay at this place, and they had a restaurant bar built into it, which a lot of hotels do. But it was like this seedy, like weird, like old school, almost like medieval looking like tavern with like really dark lights and like those red like lampshades that would make the red light. Like at all the booths, and they had a lot of booths. With like and the booths had windows, like the caged windows on the side of the booths, and they would overlook this bowling alley, and it had a full-scale bowling alley, maybe 10 lanes in this hotel. And they had a swimming pool, they had a bowling alley, they had I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but bear with me. They had this restaurant, and they had like fish and chips, or all this like bar food that I obviously loved. And all of it was cheap. And the hotel room wasn't bad. And it was like a Days Inn. It wasn't terrible. It had I remember that really crazy carpet in it. But my dad's like we'd stay there Friday night and Saturday night, and he picked when she was out there and he couldn't get her to go. He would come and pick me up. He had that Mustang at the time, and he would pick me up, and he would take me to. He would take me down there because that was south of my mom's trailer in Rochester, and we'd stay there for the weekend. And they had cable television, so we had movies and stuff we could watch, and which is kind of what I do. And I'd grab my comics and stuff and my drawing pads and stuff, all my drawing supplies. I'd all put it in this thing, and I would take it, and I would go to this hotel. And the thing was, I know why my dad was going to the hotel. I like to go to the hotel. None of these occurrences happened when him and I went there, but I know he snuck out to that hotel a few times to get away from that lady and would stay here a few times. It's because the first night we stayed there, I don't know if you remember the War of the Worlds TV show. It was like that around that time. It was airing, and I was like, Dad, I want to watch the War of the Worlds TV show. So we went down there and we bowled, because him and I both like to bowl. And we got some cool, some good food, and then we went back to the hotel room because I wanted to watch this show. And he's like, fine. So we went down to the show, or went up to watch the thing, and the TV show, and they get this knock on the door, and I'm just assuming it's, room service or whatever. So when I open the door, and it's two women, and they're dressed pretty provocatively, and anyways, and they see me and they go, "Oh, we're sorry." And because I know what they were thinking, they're like, they thought it was a single dude in this room. They're prostitutes. That whole hotel was just a big prostitute. It was a big whorehouse, is what it really was, like a brothel. And he would stay. I wonder if it's still like that today. I need to go. So anyways, he would go there. So anyways, he was like, my dad kind of knew the situation instantly. My dad was kind of into that world, so he knew, he could sniff that stuff out. And anyways, like, oh, and I was like, who are they? And he's like, I don't know, we must have the wrong room number. And then I kind of put two and two together. And then my dad, of course, when I was watching War of the Worlds, he was bored. He didn't want to watch War of the Worlds. He's like, I'm going to go, did he smoke at the time? I think he quit smoking by then. But he still drank. So he's like, I'm going to go get a beer down at the bar. And I know where he was going. He wasn't gone that long, so I don't think anything happened at that specific time. But I think he was checking out to see what the action was. And, and like I said, we stayed there probably 5 or 6 times throughout those years, or that time period when he lived out the trailer. Which by '89 he actually moved back into Rochester. But so we're talking like that end of that school year, into that summer a few times, and maybe I think maybe I don't know exactly, but yeah, I'm sure he used to sneak off to that hotel a lot for obvious reasons, to take advantage of their $25 a night thing. Sorry, it was a huge long story, but what it meant was that first time we went out there, I didn't really know where we were because I never had gone that far over there. I didn't have my license yet, so I didn't drive. I didn't go over that far. And I said, I think Saturday. He's like, "Well, want to go out and do something? Want to go shopping or something?" And I was looking around. We got the phone book, and I said, there's a comic book shop really close to here called Comics Corner. It's in Fraser. And he's like, yeah, you're right. That's not that far from here. So we're close to Fraser. And so we went over to Fraser, and we went to the Comics Corner for the first time. And, and the crazy guy ran Comics Corner. A really tall guy, long hair, big dangly earring. And he was like, he's one of these guys that could just talks really fast. He's like, he's a moving and a shaking. You know what I mean? And it kind of made me nervous. And then he had like this underling guy there who looked like a young George Lucas, kind of a wormy young George Lucas, and did a great job. And then, so anyways, when Comics Corner opened in '90 in Rochester, there on Auburn and DeQuinder, or I'm sorry, Auburn John R. It was he opened a second shop, it was a sister shop. And I remember he was there, and then the underling George Lucas would show up there once in a while, and he would work there. And then he had this other guy, if the store's still there today, it's the same guy who works there. So if you go into the store, you'll see that guy. He looked, I don't know who to describe him. He has a certain look to him, but that guy was there for like forever. And if the store's still there, which I believe it still is, he's still working. He still goes there every day. What a weird life. I don't know. I'm sure he doesn't make a lot of money, and he's not a very well-to-do person. But could you imagine? That's '90. That's over 30 years ago. Now, granted, he probably worked for this guy prior to opening the store. Could you imagine working for like 35, 40 years every single day for the most part? You get a few days off here and there. Going to a comic book shop that you don't own, right? It would be different if you owned it. But you don't own this. You go there every single day you can read comic books every day, but I don't know. I guess some people it's just a weird existence. I'm not saying I wouldn't hate it. I actually, maybe I would have liked that, but it's hard to think about when you know. So let me get back to X-Men. Just checking the time here. But, so anyways, yeah, this is one of my favorite X-Men covers of all time. I'll pop it up here so you guys can see a better look at it. Right there. I'll probably use this cover as the, in my thumbnail. But I just love it. Anyways, but yeah, I got these from Comics Corner about 8 years ago. I think it was this one. No, it's just these two, I guess. But and then of course from there, that's one thing I wanted to mention real quick. So this one here is kind of the follow-up to that issue, but okay, I broke my own rule. This is Leonardi. There he is again. And again, it's like his style's like morphing too. But I guess I like that drawing of Rogue. I don't know. His face just looks bad. But yeah, so there's this issue. It's not terrible. It's just just have issues with it. But anyways, so that's that comic there. And then we've got, sorry, I got these out of order now. And then 238, which was, this is the first issue before the Inferno began. Oh, sorry, Ignite Inferno. Technically, this is not the first issue of Inferno. This is called Ignite Inferno. So technically, this is your last issue before Inferno begins. But this pretty much, I mean, there's Madeline Pryor, there's Mr. Sinister. It's Ignite Inferno. So when Inferno begins, so I still consider it part of Inferno. Like, I think when I sold it, obviously I sold this issue too as the pack for part of Inferno. And then Inferno, of course, is 41. My gosh, that way he drew Madeline Pryor, something else. One of my other favorite characters. And of course, this crossed over, just like New Mutants did the same thing, or Fall of the Mutants. It crossed over with X Factor and New Mutants. Not a huge fan of the X Factor comics. They're all done by Simonson, and I'm not a huge fan of Simonson. And then when after Inferno is done, then we kick into this. It's a pretty classic issue. I don't have it currently. I think this is the first. No, this is Silvestri. Is this Silvestri? So let's check it out. That's Silvestri. This is kind of loosely. This is kind of like when Jubilee shows up. I'm pretty sure, and this is kind of loosely what kind of is the plot of the new yeah, there's Jubilee, is the plot of episode 1 of the cartoon, the animated series from the 90s, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But so that's kind of where it started. Was that I always like this where she grabs her arm. But like I said, I don't like when they get out of costume. Stay in your costumes. Even though, I mean, it's cool looking dress on her, but because she's got the black bodysuit underneath. I thought that was kind of neat. But I don't know if you can see or I see these characters, my eyes just light up. Yeah, so that kind of starts that, and of course not that far after is when you get the first Jim Lee issue. Now I think that's a Liefeld issue, and another one of my favorite Rogue covers of all time is that cover there. I'll cover that one on a different date, and of course, you know, I need to do a full-out Rogue issue. I was going to do that today and do just a Rogue episode, but I wasn't really super prepared for it, so I'll do a full-out Rogue issue, and this is, like I said, this is the comic that broke my heart. This is I remember this vividly. I've told you this story before in another video, but I remember this is the comic. I got this right off the spinner rack, and this is the comic that broke my heart after this. And I was done with, after this comic, after 247, I gave up on the X-Men for like the rest of my high school years. And it wasn't until I was a senior in high school that I had to go back and buy a lot of these issues as back issues. And this is when his first Jim Lee comic. And this is when Jim Lee started. And, you know, people, these are Silvestri comics, but people still say to this day, you know, I love this Polaris, by the way. Anyways, people still, you know, they love the Jim Lee. And you know what? I liked it then. And because I kind of got back into it after I missed a few issues. And by the time Jim Lee was kind of full into the Jim Lee issues, I was back into collecting until like the next year, and then the whole thing with, you know, the Image thing started, and the exodus from Marvel, and I was out of comics completely. And like I said, what my dad told me, what he had learned, I was out for most of the 90s, with the exception of just a few things that I kind of collected here and there. But I was definitely out of Marvel. I mean, I can't tell you, up until like the Heroes Reborn thing, which I kind of got into at the late 90s, I couldn't tell you what was going on in Marvel. All that, whatever, that stuff, I wasn't into it by then. But let's go back to that little pocket of time here. So, like I said, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I can't tell you exactly why I like this stretch. It's not like the stories are great. I mean, it's not like the stories are amazing. Let's start with this first issue here. Essentially what happens is they're in hiding after Fall of the Mutants, right? And they kind of go in hiding, and they go to Australia. For some reason, that's the place to hide. It was the 80s. You know, people loved Australia in the 80s, and I don't know why, but it was just the Down Under, Crocodile Dundee, Midnight Oil, you name, whatever it is. People just had a total hard-on for Australia at this time, so they're going to Australia. And these mutant marauders are out kind of marauding, and they would end up becoming the adversaries for a little while during this. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan of these guys. It's not like I find them to be way too 90s, too Jim Lee. You know what I mean? Jim Lee didn't do them, but you know, obviously it's Silvestri. But I find them to be too image comic-y. I wasn't a fan of them. This guy kind of reminds me of that character from the movie. There's a movie. I can't remember, what was it called? Eliminators, I think, was a movie. Had a character, it's like a cyborg character, sort of like this. Yeah, these Marauder guys kind of show up. Got a swastika on his head. And then Gateway was this, like, I can't remember what they're called, Aborigines, I think. Is that the technical term for somebody from the indigenous, like, kind of tribal, you know, almost like Native Americans, but they're from Australia. They're Native Australians. I think they're called Aborigine, I think is the name of them. But he's like one of these guys. He's got this bola, and when he spins the bola, it creates a teleportation, like gateway. That's why I call him Gateway. And he would that's how the X-Men would get back and forth to wherever from Australia. They'd use Gateway, and then they'd go back in hiding again in Australia. He said, I'm not going to give you the whole stories. Like I said, statute of limitations on spoilers is definitely expired. This is old stuff. But I'm not going to go into a deep dive. Plus, I haven't read these in a while, so I can't give you an exact play-by-play at the moment. Yeah, I can't remember who this Chicky Poo is. I think she's just some random reporter girl. I can't remember. But yeah, they're out, you know, doing their thing, and then I think they eventually go and the Marauders come to their town. I think they get transported here, and then, you know, they have to kind of deal with Rogue's costume just Silvestri would have her costume getting ripped up so many times. I don't know how many black bodysuits she's gone through, but she's definitely ruined a lot of them. Obviously, she wears the black bodysuit, so when she touches somebody, they're skin to skin. This is back when she would absorb their powers and psyche. And of course, this guy grabs a hold of her bare skin here, and he finds out, you know, boop. And then, of course, she gets all his crazy memories and everything. I think that's one of the reasons I really liked Rogue back then. This is why I hated her when she was with Gambit, because I can't stand Gambit. Gambit is like the epitome. He's like the of fiction. He's a fictitious epitome of what a total douchebag that I cannot stand. He's tall. I hate tall dudes. He's good looking. I hate good looking dudes. He's got an accent, you know, a sexy accent. I can't stand that. He's everything I hate in a dude, all wrapped up into one. And he's with my girlfriend here too. But the nice thing was back then is she was untouchable. You couldn't touch her because obviously you couldn't do that. And for some reason that made her like, you know, it was like she was your proxy, you know, your would-be girlfriend. You're like, well, I can't touch her, but nobody else can too. So you kind of, I don't know, for some reason, I know I was a teenager when this was going on. You know what teenagers are? We're freaking insane. You know, raging hormones and raging just insanity. And this is how I thought when I was reading these comics. And this is probably also why I have such a fondness. But I tell you, I can't tell you why I like the comic, this series, particular version of the X-Men. That's part of it right there, is what I'm telling you. I just think Wolverine was cool then, and he wasn't like the "Hey bub," like he wasn't. He said that obviously it's part of his character, but Wolverine, the way Chris Claremont was writing Wolverine, and the way Sylvester drew him, it really did. He was like really dark and very like very intimidating. I mean, he wasn't comical really. He wasn't "Hey bub." He wasn't saying "Hey bub" every 5 seconds. And he wasn't, talking about, like, I got boxer shorts older than you, kid. Meh. It wasn't like the salty, kind of like comic-y version of Wolverine. He was like a dark, brooding, like Wolverine, which, he was, I kind of liked that about him. I thought he was cooler then. And then, and of course, there's Rogue in her outfit. And then Longshot was there. Remember, I was really like I liked Dazzler at the time, and I loved the Dazzler costume. And then Roma shows up, which Roma, okay, so they start talking about the Siege Perilous. And eventually, like I said, that's what ends up, Rogue succumbs to the Siege Perilous in that issue, where she goes through the Siege Perilous, and everybody just assumes she's dead. And I was like, oh my god, my girlfriend's died. His died. And, and it was like a soap opera. I was so into this at this time. I was like, it was like one of the only things I was thinking of. I'd say, I take that back. I mean, I got into anime at the time, But I mean, this whole point, especially this whole summer, in this summer too, yeah. This is 88, right? Yeah. After 9th grade was over, and into the summer between 9th and 10th grade. And, yeah, I don't know. I was so into the X-Men. So into these issues. So into Rogue. And I love the Psylocke. I like this version of Psylocke better. I mean, the Ninja Psylocke is cool. Obviously, she's got the sexy costume, which I like. But really, I think I like the older, the English-speaking Betsy Braddock better. Psylocke better than the Ninja Psylocke. Just because the Ninja, it's too Jim Lee. I said I was not a fan of Jim Lee, and I don't want to be contrarian, but I don't like the Jim Lee Rogue. I guess I think I've said it before, and you guys know I just don't like the Jim Lee Rogue. I don't like the Jim Lee X-Men. And that's part of the reason why I don't like the cartoon as much. I mean, I don't dislike it. I can enjoy the animated show. I'm not a hater of it by any stretch of the means. However, I don't like the Jim Lee aspect of it. I don't like how they kind of changed some of the storylines around. And I mean, I was literally like eating and breathing in this stuff at the time, and when they come around, they change things. It really pissed me off. It's just like, that's not how this goes. I mean, even the Pride of the X-Men, I mean, I like that better than the newer one, but it was still like, what's going on here? This is not how Kitty Pryde shows up. I just didn't like that. I just didn't like them tampering. Why can't they just, can they not, is it that impossible? Sorry, I'm going to go on a rant. Is it that impossible to not just make an animated version of, let's say this comic here, shot for shot, color for color, that background and the animation cell should look exactly like that background, for this background here, right? The colors should look exactly the same. The drawing should look exactly the same. This exact scene should be in that comic. Can they not just take the comic book and animate it? I know it sounds stupid. To me it doesn't, but I'm to a rational person, and I'm not thinking rationally when I'm thinking about this stuff. I'm speaking, emotionally about it. And it's just like, obviously they're not going to do this. If I had money, I would do this, right? This is what I would create. Despite, I wouldn't care if it lost any. I don't care if anybody didn't want to see it. But this is what I would make. And I would be happy with it. And I'm almost 100% positive that what comes out the other end would be just exactly what I want it to be. Just make the comic book scene for scene, shot for shot, word for word. I mean, you might have to play around with a few things in the screenplay to get things to match up and get things to work. But can you just do the exact story from the comic book into the show? Manga, and then read a manga and read the anime, they tweak a little bit things here and there, but by and large, it's pretty close. It's pretty much spot on to the manga. I'm thinking of Love Hina comes to mind. I remember reading all of Love Hina and then watching the anime, and I'm like, when this is so close to the manga, it's. I mean, they didn't change. They changed like a couple of lines, or maybe they kind of edited a scene around to make more sense, on the show. But for the most part, it was a translation straight from the manga. Well, I just don't know why they can't do that with this stuff, and they just don't want to do it. And maybe it wouldn't. Maybe they're right. Maybe it wouldn't sell. Maybe nobody would like it. I would love it. I happen to like things that other people like, so I would think that it would work. So, again, I'm not going to get into all of these. Let's just kind of skip through a couple of them here. Let's go to my favorite one, of course. So, in this one, Wolverine and Rogue end up in Genosha, and they're naked, which is kind of interesting. That's not why I like the comic. Actually, I mean, a naked Rogue is not, to me, I think she looks better visually, I think she looks better with the green, with some green in the black. I just think it looks good. An all-naked character, dude or girl, is just kind of, it's too much skin. I don't want to see that much skin. I like to see certain parts of the skin, but I don't like to see that much skin. I like some kind of contrast, That's why I think, like a really attractive girl in a big like oversized like sleeping, like those jerseys, like like those like sports jersey pajama kind of like nightshirt things. I always thought that when she's got her legs out, I always thought that was like super. I don't know what movie I saw that in. I know like Three's Company, like Janet had that for a while, and I'm thinking of another showgirl was wearing that type of thing. I just think that's one of like the hottest things is that that oversized like jersey nightshirt, sleeping shirt on like a dark-haired girl. I don't know, for some reason I like that a lot. But anyways, sorry, my mind's going right down in the gutter. Let's get it back out a little bit here. So, Naked Rogue. No, like I said, it's a little too much. I love the artwork. I really like that. They put the little convenient thing to cover her naked butt there, which is fine. But I love this panel. And it's not, I mean, take the nakedness away. You could put her costume back. I just love the way her hair looks in this. And every single time I try to draw her hair, I look at this panel and I'm like, what is working in this panel so well for me? And why can I not duplicate this in other drawings from different, it's hard. This hair is so hard to draw. I don't look at. You think about hair is hard to draw in general, but I mean, there's certain hairs that I can draw just fine from every angle, top, bottom, you name it. But this hair, and to get it to look, I mean, just this, something about the way this drawing is, I don't know, it's just a certain amount of way the blacks are in there, a certain amount of the way the lines are. I mean, some of these look a little too heavy, but just the overall like silhouette of this hair and the line work on this, and with the white, with the blue, and it's just, I love that. I don't know. Every time I try to draw Rogue's hair like this, I try to, this panel is just, I stare at this panel for hours, not hours, but for a long time, and try to get that down, and it's just, it doesn't work. I get it, I'd say I get it to about 70% there, and there's the missing 30% that I just can't seem to get down right. I know this comic very recently too, because like I said, I did this kind of like alternative telling of this story, and so I know these scenes awfully well. But yeah, so they're being imprisoned in Genosha. She's got like this Genosian suit, like inmate suit on, and then of course the X-Men are gonna go and save her and Wolverine. I can't remember Wolverine's at this time. They just have him locked up. And then she starts, I just thought this was cool. I don't know why. It has very like something, I don't know, hard to describe too. almost like a Blade Runner look to it because like the signs, and then her in silhouette, her standing with her hair like that. I don't know, just love that. Okay, now this is also, I never read, like I said, I had the first appearance of Rogue in the X-Men, right, and had been reading it since then. And I know that she got her powers from Carol Danvers. I think somebody told me that because I never read the Avengers annual where that happened, and I really wasn't super, because she just wasn't a huge character then. I wasn't really into Carol, the Miss Marvel. But when she shows up here, I always thought she looked stunning in that costume. That's my favorite Miss Marvel costume by far. I mean, for obvious reasons. But I mean, not just that, but I just like the black in the mask. And then she's kind of talking to her, about the, she took her powers or whatever. So, it wasn't until this shows up in this comic that I was I think I was questioning, what happened? What was going on? Because I didn't read the other comics. I was like, how did she get her powers from Miss Marvel? How did this go down? And then it kind of like sparked on that. So this is comic is where I started to kind of learn about that stuff. The guy I did the comic for, he didn't want this costume. He thought it looked terrible. I think it looks cool. It looks pretty over the top. But I thought the costume looks cool. This like inmate costume. I did more like the inmate costume that Storm wears from the Jim Lee X-Men, of all things. Kind of did that look. But yeah. And then this follows up. Oh goodness. I say it's been a long week, but it seems like it's been a long week every week. And then, of course, here, we kind of went through this, the Lombardi issue. What's the last issue here? The one right before it. This one. This comic? Yeah, this one here. Just trying to remember what happens in this. Oh, that's right. Madeline Pryor does show up. That's Genosha. That's right, Rogue's still there. Oh, I haven't broke them out yet. I think they're still trying to get to them. This is weird. I don't... But for one thing, her hair's not colored the white up top. Is that like that in the comic? I'm just curious. Give me a second here. Well, I was going to say about the comics where I don't really care so much. I love the smell of milk. Oh, God. I got to get that smell. No, see, that's what I thought. She's colored. She's colored correctly here. So whoever colored this colorization for these came from an omnibus. It's not colored correctly, but I don't know. I just love seeing the tape, like the Columbia House ads in the middle. I used to sit there and go through theirs and write down all the ones I was going to order, which I've ordered from Columbia House, maybe, don't tell anybody, but I've ordered from them a few times and never fulfilled the contract and got the free albums. I don't know. Now I'm looking at the paper. I like the paper. See, I don't know. Something about the comics, it's like, oh, well, I like the superior color and stuff. But you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, if it's bad, like as in like it's not matching up and it looks terrible, I don't like it. But now I'm looking at this, and like I said, for me, that's part of comic books right there, is that comic book smell. I love that comic book smell. But yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm kind of missing the comics I don't have. Now I got to go back and get the missing ones in my holes. But having these digital copies are fine. They are very convenient, but they're just like streaming music. It's like I'd rather have the vinyl, or even a CD for that matter. But I don't know. Maybe I will go back and find some of these. Well, but the problem is these get pricey. Sometimes people want like $15-20 for some of these issues, and it's like, are they really worth that much? I don't know. I love this time period in my life. I love this time period in my life. Even though there's a lot, like I said, nostalgia is a weird thing. there's a lot of weird things going on. There was a whole thing where we go and stand at the hotel. I mean, I like parts of that, aspects of that. Um, but weird parts with that, what was really going on. I mean, there's things that were really going on kind of behind the scenes that I was kind of blocking out of my head. Weren't the best of times then. A lot of things going. My dad was, like I said, my dad was definitely a character, and there was a lot of things that he did that I kind of either just wasn't 100% aware of what he was doing, or I just kind of blocked it out of my head. I mean, he was never mean to me. I mean, he would get drunk a lot, and he would, because he was an alcoholic, and he would say hurtful things. Never really about me specifically, but he hated my mother, his ex-wife, and it's just the things he would say. Woo! I mean, I've never even came close. I mean, I was irritated at my ex-wife when we got to, my son's mother, when we got divorced, but, I was irritated, but I was more like disappointed, irritated, and I wasn't really super, like, angry at her, because a lot of it was my fault. I'm the first one who would agree. The first one to admit, I would say most of it. Well, no, I wouldn't say most. I'd say we were 50-50. We were both to blame. But so I don't really have, even it's been 10 years since the fact, so I don't really have a lot of harboring a lot of bad thoughts about the divorce. But my dad, whoo, and it's weird. It's like, I know how my mom is now, and I know how my mom has been for a while. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say anything bad about my mom, but if I was my dad, right, I don't think there was any way I could have stayed with my mom if she was to act the way that she acted, and vice versa. So it's a good thing they got divorced, but the things my dad would say, which, was hurtful to a young kid, but, he was never, mean to me. I said never spanked me, never anything like that. He tried everything he could do to get me what I needed, but yeah, there's a lot of other crazy things were going on at the time that, my son's never going to go through any of that, so, it was a different time period back then. I mean, we're talking 80, 88, the whole 80s pretty much. People were different back then, and not always for the good. I mean, people have a lot of nostalgia. Like, so let's say nostalgia is a two-way street. You've got the warm, fuzzy feelings. You loved your action figures. You loved your 80s music. You loved your MTV. You loved whatever your 80s thing that you love. And I agree that things seemed to be better as far as just people, the internet. I think the biggest thing that has killed a lot of the stuff that the 80s was about is, in the beginning of the 90s, is the internet has changed the world so drastically. And none of that really existed then. And people are people, but the thing is, it was a different mind. You watch Stranger Things. I mean, that's not a super accurate representation of that time period, but it's pretty close. Things were just different. And I liked it then better, but the thing is, I had no I was a kid. I graduated in 91, so I went pretty much the entire 80s, as a kid. So I had no real responsibility. My only responsibility was don't get in trouble, don't cost my parents money, because they didn't have any money to get me out of trouble if I got in trouble. Or like I said, we grew up, I'd say we grew up poor. I mean, I'm not even going to say middle class, lower, because my mom was not, I could tell you what my mom made. My mom made, from the time of the divorce up until I graduated high school, I think the most my mom ever made was $5 an hour. So that'll tell you. And, she worked 30 to 40 hours a week. So that'll tell you how much money that we had back then. And we lived in a trailer, which, oddly enough, seems to be more expensive than if we would have lived in an apartment when you think about it. Trailers are not even though they're considered like ghetto, you know, or where poor people live, trailers are technically more expensive to live there than it was just to rent a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. Although my mom did rent a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment at Great Oaks and said she couldn't afford it. So it's a weird, I don't know, it's kind of odd to think about. It is really odd to think about. We moved out of Great Oaks because my mom couldn't afford it, and we lived at that house for a while, which that was dirt cheap, and it was, you know, it was not a great place. But then we ended up moving to the trailer park, and even though the friend of the family bought the trailer for my mom, the lot payment at the time was like close to $500. It seems like a lot of money back then. I mean, you know, I only pay $600 for this palatial palace you see here. So, you know, and I could, if I couldn't afford to live here, if I made $5 an hour, you know, if I only brought home, what's that, a week? Or $5 times 40? What's that? I can't think. $200 a week? You know, $800 a month? There's no way I could afford to live here like that. So I don't know how my mom did it. Tell you, I have no clue how. I mean, wait, I take it back. I know how she did it. She did. Why does this turn into this weird talk about my family? But anyways, she made or she got money for me until I was 18. My dad did not pay child support, but my mom got money from me from the state for me up until I was 18, which wasn't a lot of money, but it was like $800 a month or something like that. So let's say she made 800, which she didn't even make that much. Let's say she made $600-700 a month, and then she got another $800. So she made, you know, and she like I said, she gave the old ladies the poodle cuts, the permanents and stuff on the weekends. So let's just say she was bringing in $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Then that's like bringing in like $4,000. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's not. It's hard to. Just money's just goofy. Just a lot of the. Yes, things was cheaper back then, but at the same time, things weren't. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird to think about. But like I said, so I'm just saying is there was bad times in those time periods. But the thing for me, I think personally, is because I was a kid. You're young, you don't know any better, and you have no real responsibility. I mean, the only responsibility is, you know, part of the year you got to go to school. You got to get up and go to school, and you can't fail or drop out of high school or whatever school. That was my only responsibility. In the summers, up until I got a summer job, which, you know, and actually, well, I take it back. I was been working, you know, doing lawns and stuff like that. But, you know, you really didn't have any responsibilities. Just don't get in trouble. Don't you know, don't get in trouble, and don't cause your parents grief. It's pretty much the you know, don't hurt yourself. You know, that's pretty much my responsibilities up until, you know, adulthood. So, that's why I think, and, you know, like I said, a lot of these things were formative years, and a lot of these things, you know, this is when you're young and impressionable, and a lot of this stuff really, you know, kind of seeps into you. So, like I said, you know, you can be nostalgic for the past, but even if it was like the way it was now, you're still an adult. You know, I'm still a 50-year-old man. I mean, you know, I got a kid. I mean, things would be different, but things wouldn't be that different. You know, you know, especially if things were relative, if money was relative. You know, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I've never really made it out of that you know, lower middle class. Not even, I wouldn't say even lower middle class. Lower middle class seemed to be like two parents that were working or struggling. You know, I don't think I've ever made it out of, you know, the lower class ever. And I've spent a lot of time in poverty. So, you know, my whole perspective on the world is a lot different than a lot of other people's perspective. I mean, there's a lot of people who share my perspective. I mean, there's probably more people out there that share my perspective than don't. But, you know, if you're watching this or whatever, or, you know, if you're even paying attention to anything I'm saying about this stuff, your views might not match up with my views. Some of them might. Some people might. Some people like, I know exactly what you're talking about, Tim. You know, it's exactly how I grew up, and, you know, you get it. but there's some people that don't. So I said, when I start talking weird like this, it's all point of view. It's all perspective. So that's probably a good place to stop it because I've got an hour and 4 minutes. And I'll go back to the screen I should have opened on but didn't. So let's put it back up here. What's going on? I don't have... Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Even though it's not Friday, I ordered because I want to get it before it's sold out. And I wanted it to come tomorrow, or it's not going to come tomorrow. Well, it said it might come tomorrow, but I ordered the first Ghost album, the Opus Eponymous, and I ordered the t-shirt. So that should be coming. I don't think anything's going to fully be here till next week, so I'm probably not going to make any videos until Monday. So, which will be the day that I air the video too, because this is a Friday video. Yeah, so I'm going to do that album, and I'm going to listen to it a couple of times over the weekend again, on my YouTube Music, just to kind of get it fresh in my head. But I'll probably do my review / whatever, my take on that album next. I was going to get maybe I didn't tell you about this. So yeah, I went on YouTube and I found another listing, or not YouTube, I went on Amazon, found another listing for that album, and it's not sold out, and it's the same price that it was supposed to be. So I was like, okay, so maybe it's just that I had the wrong listing before and that sold out, whatever. Regardless, I got the album that's on its way. So, and I paid the normal price for it. So everything's good there. So I have one more studio album to buy, which is Meliora. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I'll get the t-shirt with that. Watch, that's not going to be available when it comes out. But that'll be next week's. Then I'll have all the studio albums, and then I might pause on going back and... I don't know, Pope Star right now is really cheap. It's like $17. But I might go back and wait to get those 3 EPs that I don't have later, and I might go grab some other albums from other bands. I still got 3 Iron Maiden albums. I actually got more than that, but I got some Iron Maiden albums I'd like to pick up too. But like I said, I'm trying to limit myself. 1 album a week. That's all I get. That's my allowance. And 1 shirt. and no action figures right now, except for the 1 pre-order that's supposed to come up, I think, next month. I'll have it come out. Otherwise, I'm kind of done, because there's nothing left to buy. And there's nothing really I want a lot, to tell you the truth. But, yeah, so, sorry, keep babbling on about this one. So, I don't know what I'm going to do Monday, if it's going to be the album one or whatever, but I'm going to, whatever it is, it's going to post late, so I'm not going to be able to post it in the morning, because I won't have it done. And I got to do a lot of work Monday on some commissions and stuff. So, and my other comics kind of fine for right now, but I got a lot of commission work to get caught up on. So that's going to happen Monday, and my postings and all the other stuff. So I probably won't have a YouTube video out probably till the evening. After I'm done working, had dinner, then I'll record a video, which will also give me time, because if that stuff comes, I can wait. Maybe we'll do regardless, if the album doesn't come this weekend and it comes next week while I'm recording, I will definitely keep it in its box, and we'll do an unboxing with it. Not that that matters, but I mean, I'll just do an unboxing just because it'll be there. So yeah, we'll do that, and then like I said, I'm not gonna go music crazy. I'm gonna try to do some more comic stuff, reviews or whatever you call it. Just talk. I'm not really reviewing anything. I'm just talking about them, kind of telling you. Like I said, this is all about my experience with this stuff. If you just want to hear somebody else's experience with this stuff, or if you want to learn about this stuff through my experiences, this is what this channel is all about. It's a little bit of review, it's a little bit of rants, it's a little bit of unboxing, it's a little bit of reaction videos, it's just a little bit of everything. It's just what's currently in my on my doorstep at the moment, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So, alright, have a good weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Alright, take care, bye-bye.